Live slow, live it up, watching time go. Planning moves, things solid to this cheat code. Get your money, make it big, fuck being broke. Get your money, make it big, fuck being broke. Live slow, live it up, watching time go. Making moves, things solid to this cheat code. Get your money, make it big, fuck being broke. Get your money, make it big, fuck being broke. This how it is, the mission's Benjamins. And fuck the drama and the bullshit, we ain't little kids. My circle small, but my riders heart, they never quit. Get your money, keep it gangsta, solid, straight legit. Never switch like the real ones that die for this. It's fucked up, but this is truly how it is. I hope you're ready if you're picking this like full of sin. No turning back, I represent my vital to the end. Fuck the fakes and the snakes and everyone that hates. I'm not phased, I won't break, bitch, I'll never.
You are now watching M.O.D. Entertainment.
Alright, as we continue the list of city neighborhoods, we'll be now heading towards the Antelope Valley, the 661. You already know the Antelope Valley be cracking. Although it may not be, from the pictures that you guys can see, it may not be as, gang infested as other areas. There is more, spacious room over here to move around. But don't ever get it twisted. It doesn't mean that it doesn't crack over here. It gets crazy over here too, you know what I mean? Because even though there's not that many, there's still several. And one of them is considered one of these city barrios, which is known as the Varrio BLC. BLC translating to Barrio Lancaster City. Now, Barrio Lancaster City started off as a tag banging crew that transitioned into homeboys. They were a tag banging crew that was around in the early 90s and, became a neighborhood roughly around the early 2000s. Now, although there used to be a tag banging crew in the San Fernando Valley called BLC as well, blazing like crazy, they ended up becoming Hollywood Locos. So they had no connection to this BLC. It was two different BLCs. One in the Antelope Valley. This was in the San Fernando Valley. So they had no connection. But the one in the Antelope Valley, became a neighborhood, and it stood for, Barrio Lancaster City. Obviously, when it was a tag banging crew, it stood for a bunch of several things. But this is the name of their barrio now, and it's not the same as Westside Lancaster either. Lancas, they have no connection to them either. As a matter of fact, there's rivalry, so they're two different barrios. You know what I mean? Just named themselves after the area of Lancaster, obviously. And their barrios, everything that's from Challenger Way to Avenue H. And then all the way to Avenue K, and from Avenue K, it extends all the way to 20th Street. So everything that's in the middle, which is a pretty decent size of territory, is considered their barrio. So throughout 15th Street, throughout Avenue I, throughout Lancaster Boulevard, throughout Avenue J, throughout Avenue JA, throughout all of that was considered their barrio, you know what I mean? And obviously 15th, that slices through their neighborhood, but all of that is what's known as the Barrio Lancaster City. Now this neighborhood actually blew up in size really quick, you know what I mean? Because it is one of Lancaster's largest neighborhood, with having several clicas, to their barrio, because this neighborhood, at least from what I was told, is that they're roughly about 78 and more members, you know what I mean? 78 and up, homie didn't have a specific amount. But that's just here in Lancaster City, because they are also located in Northern California, you know what I mean? So they have homies in Northern Califas, you know what I mean? So this neighborhood is in Northern California, so they have upstate sureños. And this neighborhood has homies in Mexico too. So they have homies sprinkled around, you know what I'm saying? So in total, the homies said that they're probably like about 200 heads in total. But only here in Lancaster, there's like roughly about like 70 some heads, which is still big, for the area itself, you know what I mean? Because it gets on and cracking over here. And yes, this is a real barrio, that been doing their thing and putting the Barrio Lancaster City, on the map and holding it down. Now, to find the next city neighborhood, we actually have to make our way down to the area that is known as the Desert Empire. The Desert Empire, by Palm Springs, Cathedral, all of that, area on that side, is home to one of these city neighborhoods that often gets forgotten, you know what I mean? Because obviously this neighborhood is not old school, and it's a very small neighborhood, so it hasn't been around that long, so, that's the reason why you don't hear about it as much and stuff like that. Now, it was a tagging crew that became a neighborhood. This tagging crew was roughly started around the late 90s, early 2000s, and then roughly around mid 2000 is when they became a neighborhood. but they were always a small neighborhood. I was told that they're roughly 80 members in total, meaning they're homies that they have in El Salvador and in Mexico. But here in just this area that's known as the Desert Empire, they're roughly only like about 40 members. So, you know, a little bit more of the smaller gang. But nonetheless, you know, they have real writers that do their thing. And this neighborhood was actually started in the high school because there was a crib set that was right there that used to, you know, bully Hispanics. So, you know, these Hispanics started banding together to form clicas. And one of them was the OCLS, you know, the Old City Locals. And the Old City Locals, their vitals, everything that's from Sunrise Way to Joyce Drive. And then from that, the territory still extends all the way to Vista Chino, and Vista Chino, their territory still extends all the way to Whitewater. So everything that's in the middle is considered their barrio. So throughout Verana, throughout Cerritos, throughout Del Lago, Farrell, you know, all of that, Desert Park Avenue, all of that was considered the barrio. Old City Locals, where they're roaming around, where they do their thing, you know what I mean? Close to the Desert Park area. That is what's known as the Old City Locals. Like I said, roughly a more smaller neighborhood, but nonetheless, hold it down for theirs. And now, as we slide on through to the west side of Los Angeles, where we're able to find the next city neighborhood. Now, you guys already know where I'm heading with this one, to the very infamous red ragging Sureños, the Culver City neighborhood, the CXC or CCB, sometimes Culver City Boys, or just Barrio Culver City. Culver City is a neighborhood that's already been established here since the 1960s, when this neighborhood was established. And here's a fun fact. Their neighborhood actually started in Culver City because I know, you know, their barrios where the Mar Vista projects are at. But people be like, that's not even Culver City, blah, blah, blah. Hold up. They started in Culver City, which is just right there, you know, just across the street from the Mar Vista, you know, projects, whatever. So they started in Culver City, and then roughly around the 1970s, you know, they slowly started moving into the Mar Vista projects, and then that became headquarters of theirs. They took it over pretty much, you know what I mean? That became their barrio. It became their hood. But they originally started right there in Culver City throughout those back streets and everything like that, and as time went on, they just started, you know, slowly, you know, expanding and pretty much controlling the Mar Vista projects. You know, the Mar Vista projects, you know, one of the, you know, largest, infamous, very notorious project sets, you know, when it comes to Los Angeles. At one point, you know, law enforcement called this neighborhood, you know, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in all of LA County. They were large, they were roofless. It was going down right here, homie. You know, you don't got to take my word for it. You can look at all the reports. You know what I'm saying? These guys were doing all kinds of havoc, you know. And yes, they are red ragging, you know, Sureños. You know what I mean? That's been their color since the beginning. You know what I mean? They just gravitated to the color red. A lot of Hispanics gravitate to the color red. You know what I mean? To the Mexican flag and everything like that. You know, you see a lot of, you know, paisas wearing red as well. You know, they just like the color red, you know. So, you know, that was their color. And then plus you had already the formation of Crip gangs that were barely starting within that area. And these guys were clashing with them heavily. You know, that also played an influence also. You know what I mean? Because it originally started because, you know, they were getting mistreated. You know, there were these, you know, young Chicanos or, you know, immigrants brought here since kids, and they were getting picked on and bullied. So, you know, they all banded together, and, you know, it became like one of those social clubs that just mutated into, you know, the neighborhood that we have, you know, today. Because, you know, Culver City being, you know, a very, very large neighborhood. And like I said, red raggers since the beginning. So when homies try to say, like, ain't no such thing as red, or that must be a new thing, like, bro, this shit's been since the beginning, homie. You know what I mean? You just catch these guys all flamed out from head to toe. You know, well, you guys should tell from the pictures. I mean, that's just their color. But yes, they are homeboys. And yes, right here in the Mar Vista projects, right here in the four corners of Los Angeles, the West, is where you're able to find them, continue to still be there. You know, roughly more than 600 members to the Culver City. And, you know, they still keep, you know, holding it down for theirs and putting theirs on the map. Now, as we make our way to Northern California, yes, Northern Cali is home to one of these city neighborhoods. You know, now for this one, we actually be needing to head to the area that is known as King City. And although King City is home to several upstate Sureño neighborhoods, like La Esperanza, the Mexican clan locals, and several other, barrios. There is a city neighborhood amongst these homeboys, which is known as the Barrio KC or KCD, but you mostly just see a KC, which stands for King City Dukes. You know what I mean? It's how you see it up. As a matter of fact, the Dukes is their apparel, for the college. That's what they use, as their sports gear. Also, the Royals, baseball hat, due to the fact of the KC, obvious, is why they, rock that gear. They stay really close to the Esperanza neighborhood, kind of sharing, that boundary. This neighborhood has been only around since the 90s, and it is a small neighborhood. It's never been a large neighborhood. You know what I mean? Just because the fact that these neighborhoods don't get that large as it is, and you have other Sureño neighborhoods that were here, before, is the reason for it. But don't get it twisted. These guys handle business, homie. They with the business. These guys ain't no suckers, ain't no chumps. They definitely put theirs on the map. You know what I mean? They got homies busted. They made headlines. You know what I mean? Several times actually. You know what I mean? The reports don't lie. So they got homies doing all day. It definitely cracks in the King City, and the King City Dukes definitely put it down for theirs. And no, they have no relations to the other KC neighborhoods, like the Crazy Crowds and the other KC neighborhood. They're all different barrios, you know what I mean? Just same abbreviation. But this King City is different from the others. And they continue to represent right here for the upstate homies and putting theirs on the map. Now, as we maintain ourselves over here in Northern California, where the upstate homies are at, we do have another city neighborhood within this area. Now, for this neighborhood, we're going to have to actually slide on through to the area, pretty well recognized area up here, which is known as the Yuba City area. Yuba City, yes, is home to several Sureño neighborhoods. And one of them being a city neighborhood, which is the Varrio YCS, not YMCA, no, YCS. YCS translating to Barrio Yuba City Sureños. Barrio Yuba City Sureños is a neighborhood that has been established here since the 90s, roughly a smaller neighborhood, because obviously this is Northern California's territory, so, there's more Norteño neighborhoods and etc. But you do have several, smaller sets of Sureños, you know what I mean? All of these gangs being a lot more smaller, I was told, at least from what I was told, that the Yuba City neighborhood is only roughly about 25 to 30 members. But nonetheless, they do real things. As a matter of fact, they even have some rappers. You can check out their music right here on YouTube. I think they got a homie Casper and a few other dudes, from Barrio Yuba City Sureños. And they started since the 90s. Now, I don't know, they're still fully functioning right there. But that's where their birthplace was at. That's where they started. That's where they come from, and that's what they're proud to represent. You see them have it tatted and everything like that. You know what I mean? Regardless, and I don't want to hear it's not true. No. You know what I mean? They're a real neighborhood. They're really established. Police reports and everything. I mean, they were doing things. You don't gotta argue with me. You can argue with the facts. I'm just here to spit the facts. I'm not here to try to convince people of anything. You can believe what you want. But this is a real neighborhood, right here, representing out of the Yuba City. Now, to find the next city neighborhood, we actually have to slide on through to the area that is known as San Diego. You already know San Diego be cracking. Home to a gang of neighborhoods. SD ain't playing. And it has several city neighborhoods, but we're going to be sliding on through to the area that is known as City Heights. This is where we're able to find the next city neighborhood on the list, which is known as the Barrio City Heights. City Heights Juniors is probably the more recognizable clique, the largest, often seen the most. But they have several cliques. They have the Insane Criminals. They have the Deacon Locos. I think that's how you pronounce that street. So they have several cliques to their barrio, but the Juniors is probably the one that's more recognized and the one that's, seen more, out of the rest. But, nonetheless, this neighborhood holds it down for theirs because they be getting treasures right there in that area because you have out of like East San Diego right there, you know what I mean? Which is a large neighborhood in itself. You have the Oak Parks, you have the Aztec Nation, you have the North Parks. You know what I mean? It gets treacherous within this area. You know what I mean? So these guys got to stay on their toes. It definitely be cracking in these areas. You know, people got it twisted to want to judge the area just because of the way it looks. Like I said, looks can deceive, bro. And they definitely be going down right here for the City Heights and the Juniors, and then putting theirs on the map. Another neighborhood, homeboy neighborhood that we have, that's a city neighborhood. Now for this one, we actually have to be hitting the road and traveling to a distance to the area of Las Vegas. Yes, Las Vegas, you could find homeboys here in Vegas. Actually, you can find a lot of homeboys in Vegas. Vegas definitely has a lot of sureños, a lot of homeboys. And it is home to one of these city neighborhoods. You know what I mean? And one of the Las Vegas most treacherous area, the ghetto, the slums, where poverty is real up in this. You know what I'm saying? You see homeless everywhere. You see prostitution and drugs and crime. And man, bro, the slums, homie. This ain't the Vegas Strip, my boy. We're talking about the slums. Rich folks around here. And this is where we're able to find the next barrio, which is known as the Varrio BNC translating to Barrio Naked City, right here in Naked City. And this neighborhood was actually started by some southern homies from LA that moved down over there and just started their own neighborhood over there roughly around the 90s when this neighborhood was established, and it just expanded and grew in numbers awfully fast because it is one of the largest neighborhoods and one of the more recognizable neighborhoods within this area. According to law enforcement, has them as the top dangerous and largest within this area, that gives them a hard time due to all the crimes being committed and blah 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 blah, because you have several gangs in Vegas. You know what I mean? Not just this barrio, you know what I mean? There's several other barrios. Like I said, Vegas is not like all those movies that you be watching, homie. The desert is, it gets cracking right here. I mean, you could disappear in that desert. You know what I mean? These guys ain't playing. And the Barrio Naked City is one of these neighborhoods, you know what I mean? Well recognized and holds it down for Las Vegas and the homeboys right there. And definitely been putting theirs on the maps, like I said, since the 90s. And continue to still be pushing, you know what I mean? Because they still active and still, doing their thing right there, holding it down for that BNC, Barrio Naked City.
Thank you for watching M.O.D.